The world demands new ways of looking at things, and so listen and learn at what some of the great forerunners have to say as we look at this shift into the online world of doing business. Not just doing business, but the way we practice law, the way we mediate, the way we engage in dispute resolution. I'm so excited to have with you today attorney, mediator, arbitrator, Jeffrey Zaino. Jeffrey's been at it with many years of experience, almost more than mine, 30 years. And so with that, he brings insights and knowledge, awareness, and perspective, as well as vision about where the world has been and where the world is going when it comes to dispute resolution. He provides examples of how quickly the ADR, dispute resolution field, was able to shift as the world was turned into this, sheltered in being. Businesses shut down, businesses closed, and importantly, in the legal and dispute resolution world, the courtrooms. In fact, he shares a very interesting story where he was able to convert a multi-state, multi-party bankruptcy issue worth millions of dollars, and to get it resolved in just a few short weeks when the courts couldn't even entertain it for a number of months. So please listen and learn to what you can gain from Jeff's insights, experience, and longevity in the field. He truly is a thought leader, perhaps a disruptor, as well as a change agent in how we help people through disputes. I'm Dr. Debra Dupree, the Mindset Doc. Welcome to Decoding the Conflict Mindset. Listen now. Welcome, Jeffrey.
How you doing today, Debra? Great to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. I've had the good opportunity, Jeff, of meeting you at a couple of conferences in the past, and was very excited to have the introduction to you and get to know and follow your work over the last couple of years or so. And I am just impressed with your background, all that you do, and what you contribute to the field of dispute resolution. So kudos to you and thank you.
Oh, thank you. And thank you so much for the invite today. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I need to have great minds like yours come on board. So here we are. So I want to tell our viewers and listeners a little bit about your background so that they understand the wealth of knowledge and information that you bring to the table. Okay?
Okay, great.
So Jeff is the vice president of the commercial division of the American Arbitration Association, oftentimes referred to as the AAA, in New York. And he oversees the administration of large, complex commercial caseloads involving a panel of commercial neutrals in New York. He's been with the association since 1990. He shared with me just before we started that pretty much right out of school, and it's been 30 years since, right?
Hey, Debra, I had a whole head of hair then.
Oh!
and I did not lose that hair because of AAA. I lost it because I had two boys.
Oh, very good. Just a little bit of conflict, maybe dispute resolution in your life, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Well, in addition to his many years with AAA, Jeff is very involved in many organizations to contribute his talents and knowledge through the American Bar Association, both the dispute resolution and the business law sections, the Connecticut Bar Association, the District of Columbia Bar Association, the New York State Bar Association, specifically in the dispute resolution section, where he's an executive committee member and chair of the blog committee. Well, I could go on, and our viewers and listeners will be able to see your background in further detail once this goes live. But Jeff, I can see you're also a very avid writer and author of numerous articles, particularly around election reform, something very close and recent to our hearts. And you've been on the media quite a bit. I see with CNN, MSNBC, Bloomberg, to talk about some of those election reform efforts, as well as Help America Vote Act. That's really incredible, Jeff. Well,
that was a few years back. We had a lot of issues in elections, but it was a lot of fun being a part of the dialogue. In AAA, does elections for major unions and for major companies. A lot of people don't know that, and I used to be in that division, so we are trying to give some assistance to the public about running elections and how they should be done properly. Even though we do it on a smaller scale, that was one of our goals, and we met with a lot of board of eds. Newspaper boards. And also TV networks.
Okay, wow. Well, again, I didn't know that extensive background of AAA either. I guess if there's one thing, because there's so much that you've done, Jeff, before we sort of get into our topic for today, if there's one thing that you've experienced throughout your years of experience or your numerous media appearances or committees you've served on, what's one thing that really stands out in your mind?
I think one thing that stands out is the Storm Sandy. When Storm Sandy hit in New York and the Northeast, we put together AAA mobilized quickly a Storm Sandy program with the state of New York. And this was after the devastation of Storm Sandy. And I was charged with, my role was to find locations for the hearings, the mediations, and to recruit mediators. And I helped recruit over 200 mediators to handle these Storm Sandy cases. Now, this was not a money-making thing for AAA. This is a service that we were providing, and I felt really proud of being part of that. And we did about 6,000 cases. And out of those 6,000 cases, I believe over 65% of them settled, which was great, probably more later on. So it was something I was very proud to be a part of at AAA. And unlike our competitors, because we're so large, we can handle high-volume caseloads. And that was a high-volume caseload. And we had to mobilize it within weeks, and then within months, we were up and running with respect to doing a lot of mediations around the state.
Wow, well, very remarkable. And that was also in the time when we didn't have virtual platforms available like we do now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It would have been so nice to have the virtual platforms then, because, again, like I mentioned, one of my roles was to find the locations, and the mediations, according to the state, had to be in the location where the destruction occurred. Okay, so we had to find 10 to 15 locations throughout the state that would house mediations. And at that point, the state was not in good shape after Storm Sandy. So it was rather challenging. We were doing some mediations in synagogues. We were doing them in a old Duane Reade in Staten Island. But these are places that we were found, and that we were lucky that people donated the space for these mediations for us. Wow,
that's wonderful. I mean, it's amazing how communities will come together in times of need like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was just in Washington, D.C. before Hurricane Sandy hit. And so, it was like amazing to see what I had seen before it happened and then what happened after it happened. And again, communities are widely impacted by those kinds of things. So thank you for your services in those areas.
Absolutely. And I want to do a shout out to AAA mediators. Over 200 of them did a great job at a really reduced rate.
Wow, amazing. Well, that sort of brings us front and center to our topic for today in terms of taking a look at the world of virtual platforms, mediation, arbitration, and in light of the pandemic. And so, the world has really been turned upside down, and no one can disagree with that. But I'm curious, and that's partly why I wanted you to come on today, is in terms of helping us understand and take a look at what's been happening in the world of litigation and the emergence, or I should say the proliferation of alternative dispute resolution methods becoming even more important now than ever before. And so we know that these kinds of alternative methods and virtual platforms were already growing. Online dispute resolution has been around for quite a number of years, but it's taken on a whole new light, a whole new face with what's happened since the onset of COVID. So I'd like to hear from you, Jeff. What's happening in terms of courts and virtual hearings and things like that.
Sure. Yes, you're right. It existed before, online mediations, arbitrations, but we never really used the platforms, obviously, like we are now. It jumped, the use of the technology jumped by about 10 years. I mean, we would have probably not really been at this point for another 10 years. And now we're there. Basically, all of our mediations and arbitrations at the AAA are being done virtually. Now, we're pretty large. We do about 400,000 cases a year. Okay. And so far, since the pandemic, we've done about 16,000 cases on virtual platforms. Now, I'm really proud of the ADR community, the institutions, not just the AAA ICDR, the other ADR institutions never shut down. Okay, so when the pandemic hit in March in New York, for me, we quickly mobilized our staff. We have 600 staff at AAA. And I was so pleasantly surprised that we were able to mobilize within a week. We were up and running and dealing with our clients. And I never really worked from home that much. And my company sent me double monitors, cameras, microphones, all the great stuff that I can work from home. And I was pleasantly surprised by our mediators and arbitrators, how quickly they grasped the technology and they embraced it. And I was concerned. I was concerned because of a generational gap. And there was no generational gap. And as you know, this technology is so intuitive. It's really easy to use. And we didn't shut down. Unfortunately, the court systems had to shut down. Okay, it's the government. And where they're different, the court systems, I don't want to criticize the court systems because they have a role and they're important, but they had to shut down and they only use one virtual platform throughout the country. They select one vendor and they use one virtual platform. They're locked in. And I get that. It's state contracts, federal contracts. Unlike them, AAA, ICDR, and our competitors can use any virtual platform. Mm-hmm. People primarily, though, use Zoom. I mean, at AAA, primarily, I would say 90% of our cases are done via Zoom. But there's other great platforms out there. And if our clients come to us and say they want to use a different platform than Zoom, we'll accommodate. So that's where we have the flexibility, unlike the court systems. But it's really taken off. And I think mediation is really growing in this area, the online or the virtual platform. Arbitration, we'll see, but they're being done virtual. Now, one of the big questions, Debra, is when the pandemic hit was, can an arbitrator order a virtual hearing if the parties don't want to do it? Mm-hmm. And even before the pandemic, our rules and some of our competitors' rules had that provision in there that they could. And so we had situations where the arbitrators were ordering virtual hearings. If one side didn't want to do it, the other side wanted to do it. But where it became tricky is when both sides didn't want to do it, and that became a hot button issue. They have the authority. And a lot of arbitrators have been ruling that way, to go virtual until it's safe to go back. So, I mean, I'm pleasantly surprised how well we adapted. And I talked to my dad, who was in a different line of work than me, and he's retired now. He said he was international business. And he said, Jeff, if this happened to me 20 years ago, I couldn't have kept doing my job. And, we're the lucky ones. We really are in the ADR community and the legal community that we can keep doing our job. So we're really fortunate.
Yeah, I would agree with you in so many ways. Some aspects of industry or business, whatever it might be, have been hugely impacted, while others have simply flourished. And I think that adaptability of the ability to be flexible, to draw upon different mediums has really served the ADR community well.
Absolutely. And our arbitrators and mediators, some of them don't want to go back to in-person hearings. But I mean, I think eventually we are. And, I think I mentioned to you at the beginning before we went online, we're looking at hybrid hearings. It's going to be the future. And we think that's what's going to occur, the natural progression of what's going on right now, that when things start to get back to normal, maybe by the fall, maybe by 2022, we're going to have hybrid hearings where one person will be remote, the other person will be in the hearing room. So what we're doing at AAA ICDR is we're setting up voice-activated cameras in the ceilings. And the technology there, too, has increased dramatically in the last 5-10 years. And we can do it now. We can do a hybrid hearing. And I think a lot of the arbitrators, until they get the vaccine and mediators, don't want to go back. Yeah. And I get that. And I completely understand that. But the technology is there for us to do these type of hearings. Will it be a little challenging? Yeah. When you're not just doing a Zoom, like right now, I see you, and when a person's doing an arbitration and a mediation, they see all the parties. It's going to be a little tricky if some people are in the hearing room and the voice-activated cameras are only focusing on that one person speaking. So what we're trying to do is figure out how we can look at the whole room. With one camera on the whole room, that'll be one separate box for the arbitrator, and then one that's on the person that's speaking. So these are the challenges that we're looking at. But it's been interesting. I mean, it's been very interesting to see how much we had to adapt, and we have.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we sort of jump started, 10 years of what development would have otherwise been to accommodate all these things, and so I'd like to know, when you're talking about the hybrid models and people's reticence of being in person and so forth, how do you see that going? What does that look like in your mind, given that you've already been doing a number of these, right?
Sure. Well, we haven't done hybrid yet. We did one actually. We did one hybrid where we had but it was only the arbitrator and one other person at our location, and everyone else was remote. But we now have the technology set up in our Midtown office in Manhattan, and we're going to probably do it in some other offices. We have 26 offices around the world, and 10 of them, I believe, have hearing facilities. And my location is the biggest in Midtown Manhattan, and we have, I believe, 14 rooms there. And we, out of the big rooms, we put in cameras. I'd say 5 of the rooms have the voice-activated cameras. How will that look? I think there's going to be so many different scenarios, and this is what's been challenging when I've been dealing with the technicians that are setting this up for us, is we don't know what scenarios we're going to be dealt with. You're going to have a situation where maybe the 3 arbitrators, the tribunal will not be there, but we'll have all the parties and the witnesses in the room. Or we'll have one arbitrator and the 2 other arbitrators are going to be remote. So we got to figure out, looking at the room, how to configure the cameras. And what's making it even more challenging is the rooms are set up for social distancing. So the cameras have to be reset when we get back to normal. So It's kind of crazy. And I was saying to the technician a couple of weeks ago when I was at the office, how come you can't see? He goes, will you be able to see someone sitting next to me when we get back to normal? He goes, yes, you'll be able to see 2 or 3 people like we used to do pre-pandemic. But right now, we're 6 feet apart in the hearing room. And a hearing room that held 40 now can only hold 10 people. And so that's going to be the challenging part. But we're going to get back to that, I think. And I think it's going to be more in the area of arbitration. Less in mediation, because I do think mediators like this format. They really do like the virtual format. But we're excited that we feel like we're ahead of the curve, that we're doing this right now prior to the pandemic being over. So when our clients come to us in the fall, we can say, we're ready. We're ready to go. Whatever scenario you have, we're ready to go. And that's what we have to be. We have to be ready for this.
Well, you've said a couple of things, Jeff, that I want to build on here. In that, one is the ability to be able to read and see people around the room, and then certainly arbitration may have many more people involved than what a mediation might be. What I'm curious from your perspective is, I know from when I've spoken, and particularly about the psychology of being online for some of these things, and that will roll over into the mediator question I have for you, is that I know myself and many people that I have spoken to, find that actually being able to see all the parties in a mediation or whatever the setting might be is far easier than if you were sitting at a long conference table and everybody's stacked up side by side, and you really can't see everybody's face and the body language and using all of those clues. What's your perception about that?
I've heard the same exact thing, Debra, that some of our arbitrators especially are saying that about witnesses, that they can actually see the witness sweating. And you couldn't see that when you're in a hearing room. And, a lot of our arbitrators are, up there in the years and like myself, and you have to wear glasses. I have my glasses right here. And if you don't put them on, you can't see a person that's 3 or 4 people down in the hearing room. So I've heard that from a lot of people that they like the fact that they can see everybody, and when they're speaking, it's a lot easier. And there's been some problems. So there's been some audio issues, internet disruption issues. But I'll tell you, overall, it's not been that many problems. And when we first launched a lot of these virtual hearings, we did virtual guidelines. They're all on our webpage. The other institutions have done it also. And the big concern at the beginning was Zoom bombing. Okay, the big concern, they were saying, okay, these are confidential hearings that AAA ICDR is running. And my God, what if someone jumps in? That was our fear, okay, because we haven't done a lot of these. So we did the guidelines, and we discovered that it's the settings. It's not the system. The systems are great. It's the people, if you don't do it right. And I'll give you an example. My son's school is right up the road from where I live. He goes to a school right up the road. And they were having Zoom problem issues. They were Zoom bombing into classes. It was happening to some of his classes. And when we did the guidelines at AAA ICDR, I called up the school and sent them the guidelines. I said, try this. This is the solution. And ever since they did that, they've had no Zoom bombing problems. And we haven't really had any issues of that at all. I mean, the only issues we've had are, like I mentioned, the bad audio, bad video, bad, lighting, all that kind of stuff. And that can be addressed easily. But, I answered your question a long-winded way, but, people do like this platform, but is it going to be the future? We'll see. I mean, for some things, yes. What we say to a lot of our clients and a lot of our arbitrators and mediators is it's now a big part of our toolkit. And so you can use it for aspects of a case. In the past, preliminary hearings were done by telephone. Okay. Now all of our arbitrators are doing them via Zoom. Okay. So I see it being a big part of our toolkit in the future, definitely, without a doubt.
Well, there are so many things, again, a couple of things that you commented on. The ability to bring, particularly in arbitration, multiple parties who need to be present, like experts and things like that. The virtual platforms make it so much more accessible and far less cost.
Oh, yes. I'll give you an example. And we were so happy to get this very large case because the court system said they could not get to it for at least 8 months. It was over $1 billion bankruptcy case, okay? And we talked to the judge, and the judge said to me, well, Jeff, can you get this done, within a couple of months? And I go, Your Honor, I can get it done next week. I go, we have the virtual platforms. And now this case, over $1 billion, involved 6 parties, over 40 people, 40 participants on the Zoom screen, and 2 co-mediators, one in Texas and one in New York. And we were able to successfully maneuver it over a 6-day period, moving people around, doing different rooms. It ultimately settled, which was great. But we could not have done this without these platforms. It was so wonderful. And the cost would have been astronomical because the parties were from all over the world. It wasn't just a domestic issue. So very interesting, a fascinating thing.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, that's a perfect example of how we can do things much more expeditiously, much more economically, and reaching resolution all at the same time.
Absolutely.
You mentioned something earlier that that you find, or you're hearing mediators being more likely to stay online rather than going back to in person. Or even hybrid for that matter. And so share more about your perspective on that. I think I know what I've heard and so forth, but I'd like to hear from your perspective.
Well, the fact that we have these breakout rooms is wonderful, okay? And it makes it so much easier. The fact that they can do more cases in a week is a wonderful thing. And the fact that they're not going to be at an office at let's say AAA. I remember them being at AAA's offices, and I'm leaving saying, good night, I got to go. Lock up, guys, when you leave. And then I see them the next morning, and they were there until like 1 o'clock in the morning, and they settled it. If you're on Zoom, okay, or some other virtual platform doing a mediation, it's not that bad to end at midnight if you're just going to walk into the other room and get something to eat. So it really makes it a lot easier for the mediator. But I think one of the big things is the breakout rooms, and also the thing that you mentioned is that you can really see the parties. You can read them. You really can. And some people also say, have this old school philosophy that if you're in person, the gestures and all that kind of stuff. But I kind of disagree. I think you can see a lot more with the Zoom platform. You really can.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And that's where a lot of my work has focused on is helping professionals understand what are they seeing on the screen, because now they're seeing people much more fully than they probably did in a real life situation. And just what does the wrinkling of the forehead mean? What is the shifting of the eyes, and what kinds of emotions are they expressing? And so most of our body language is all above the waist anyway. And
Sure.
yeah, and particularly, 55% of how we communicate is through our behavior. So paying attention to the face is critically important, as well as upper body positioning. So, yeah. So more.
I definitely think, like I said before, mediation most mediations will probably stay remote, or a lot of people will want to do them remote. And what I like about what's occurred here right now, this one of the silver linings, I guess, of this pandemic, in the future, it's no longer going to be a big deal to say to someone, listen, there's a storm about to hit tomorrow. There's an ice storm that's going to hit New York tomorrow. And to say to someone, we had a hearing scheduled for tomorrow, let's just do it via virtual. And it's not going to be a big deal. And we're not going to say, let's just cancel it and reschedule. Or if there's flight delays or whatever, now we have this in our toolkit to say, no, let's just do it virtual. Are there going to be some things that definitely people want to do in person? Yes, I'm hearing that right now from a lot of counsel, a lot of parties that have never done virtual. Okay, they're concerned about it, and they have the valid concerns that we had at AAA ICDR initially. But once you do it, you become I think most people like it once they try it, and that's the problem. Our arbitrators and mediators really like it because they're doing cases all the time. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes I have to try to convince the parties that, listen, I know both sides have never done it, and I know the two attorneys have never done it. And I got to say, let's just do a test run. Let's just try it with a preliminary hearing and get them used to it. And in most cases, they come on board. They really do. And it's just a matter of convincing them. It's not the arbitrators and the mediators. It's the parties right now that we're trying to convince. And it's just because of their lack of knowledge or lack of using this technology.
Yes. And I'd like to add to that, it's not just the parties who are in conflict, but their advocates. Oftentimes their advocates are not well familiar with some of these legal strategies that we now have available. A couple things, going back to a comment that you said earlier, as far as, some of the technological glitches and the audio and visual distortions and things like that. I made the comment a couple of weeks back that, I know that we have these challenges using the technology world. However, I'd rather be sitting in the comfort of my home dealing with this and somebody dropping and then being able to pick them back up again than being out on the freeways in congested traffic where it takes me 2 hours to get somewhere instead of 30 minutes. So I'm willing to make the trade-off, and I encourage people to consider that.
Know what I noticed in being in New York, where you set a hearing for 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, or you set a meeting, people are always late. And especially since 9/11, the buildings have a lot of security. Okay, my building does too. And if one witness they didn't give us a name of one witness, that person's going to have trouble getting up to our hearing facility. And I noticed with these Zoom and the other virtual platforms, they always start on time. There's no delays. They really do. And I used to see delays of up to a half hour, 45 minutes. The arbitrator's stuck, downtown. The traffic's bad today. Or, it's UN week. So, the traffic's really bad in Midtown Manhattan where I work. So you had all these delays. You don't have it with the virtual. And like I mentioned before, a lot of our mediators and arbitrators that are very active can do far more cases, it seems like, than they could if you had to physically go. And I'm noticing that with programs like this and other programs that I speak at, I used to, do maybe 1 or 2 a month. Now I can do 2 a week because it's not draining and it's not like I have to physically go somewhere and present on something. So it's helping us get the good word out about ADR, where I can do it more than I can, in person.
Yes, absolutely. Well, for those that may still be reticent about embracing the virtual world for mediation arbitration, I'd like to just put out there too that when you think about, we talked about the traffic considerations, causing delays and things like that, but just think, for parties in arbitration or mediation who haven't had that experience before, either live or virtually, there's always a sense of fear or hesitancy about doing something new where they haven't been. And if we remove the physical transportation element of it, we don't have the stress that comes from the commute or the whether it be train or vehicle or whatever. We don't have the stress of entering through security and the delays that can happen with that unexpectedly, and then going to a brand new place they've never been to before. Instead, we walk to our table or our desk and we sit down and make sure our lights are all up, and then we're ready to go.
Absolutely. And what I like about it too is we have a lot of cases where they're business divorces, and a lot of times they're family businesses. Okay, so these are sometimes I have 2 brothers that really hate each other, or cousins that have a business, and it's kind of uncomfortable when they're in person. And sometimes you hear people shouting in these rooms, and it's like, oh God. So it's kind of nice just to have them, on the virtual world as opposed to coming to our office and, not wanting to see each other. And it's a lot easier for them. It reduces the stress level. Also, I've noticed I had a case where the parties were going at it via email, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, saying some really bad things about each other. And then when the pandemic hit, when we were a few months into the pandemic, I said, guys, let's get on a Zoom call. Normally I would say a telephone call. Okay. And we got on a Zoom call, and it calmed everyone down because they were looking at each other. They weren't being as difficult. And I think if I did it by phone, it would have been a lot different because you're hidden, you don't have that video on. So I'm using it for my role at AAA to calm people down. They get on a video, and it's a little bit, you're a little bit nicer than you would be, I think, than on a phone or especially an email. You can see these things like when lawyers start going on back and forth, it gets a little ugly sometimes.
Absolutely. And, back early on when the pandemic hit, and I was on a podcast with our colleague, Susan Guthrie, and she was sharing, well, Debra, I'm hearing more and more mediators say that mediations are actually becoming easier to resolve. There's less intensity. And I said, well, that's easy to answer. And she looked at me and said, what? And I said, well, when you're in the room with somebody that you are in conflict with, we each personally feel some tension, some heightened anxiety, our hearts racing a little faster. There's the heat of the emotional intensity. And when we're on screen, we don't actually feel that emotional intensity. We've got physical distancing imposed upon us. And also there's a phenomena too, as far as people being supposedly on camera, whether it's being recorded or not, is that, I can see myself, I can see how I'm looking, and so we tend to behave a little bit better when we know people are watching.
That's a great point. And I know Susan Guthrie does, family law, a lot of family law, and AAA doesn't do family law. We actually had some rules in the 70s, but we kind of stay away from that. But, I have a friend that's going through a divorce right now, and he was telling me how great this virtual world is. He said he used to have to go to hearings and, take a whole day off from work and go get him into his car, go to the courthouse, all that kind of stuff. Now he goes, Jeff, I'm not in your world, your ADR world. I know you're doing a lot of this, but I could be a spokesperson for this. I love it. I've now done 2 hearings during the pandemic that would have been 2 days away from work. There's only 1 hour. Met with the judge, met with my ex. We weren't stressed out because we were in 2 different areas. So I can see, that's in family law. This is definitely a great tool, without a doubt. And like I mentioned before, Susan, now she was doing it prior to the pandemic, full virtual. And now she's, I think, obviously going to continue that.
Well, like Susan, I've been doing it virtually for quite a while too, and have been trying to get more people to do it to avoid all those traffic congestions. Being in Southern California, we have a lot of freeway congestion, right?
You guys have more than us. I don't envy you.
Yeah. Well, how about let's make life a little happier and less stressful, But now, again, it's been great going this direction, and I use it for all kinds of things. And so I think it's fair to say, Jeff, that virtual platforms are here to stay.
I definitely, without a doubt, and like we talked about, we moved it ahead 10 years. Where I find a problem with it, though, is not so much with arbitration hearings and mediation hearings, but what I do a lot with AAA, ICDR, is do programs, educational programs. You can do a good program, but the networking is not the same, as an in-person event. And like you mentioned, we've seen each other at events in person, and it's a lot different. You can't go up to one person, go on the corner with that one person and talk to that one person, have a nice dialogue. Can't do it in the virtual platform. So that's one of the drawbacks we're seeing at AAA ICDR, that our training programs are good. They're good on virtual, but then we try to do the networking. It's just not the same. I mean, people bring their glass of wine and they talk and have a nice time. There's a lot. We're being creative. I know the ABA is and other groups, but it's not the same. And the reason I say that is because I in my office, we were doing like 2 events a week, receptions and networking events. And I feel bad for the people that are trying to break into the industry right now, because those networking events do help. And they really do. And it's just not the same in the virtual world.
Yeah. I agree. That's the downside, and I think everybody is missing the social engagement, the social interaction that would come from those kinds of events. And so that's something that is missing. But I would suggest to you, because that's part of what I teach in some of my programs, and is how to create those opportunities differently. So whenever I train or whatever, there's an early into the program breakout room where people are talking to each other around common questions and move them around in different activities, so they have a chance to meet each other throughout the program. Yeah.
Well, actually, where the networking is great is I've been able to network though with people now around the world. I mean, that I would have never seen. Like, I did a program at the beginning of the pandemic for the New York State Bar Association where we had 250 people. Normally in person, we'd get about 60 at my office. And we had people from around the world. And I was able to meet with people from around the world. Also, another good thing about the virtual world outside of cases is I'm able to meet with people that, people that would not normally meet with me. Like that judge I mentioned for that big bankruptcy case. I don't think she would have normally met with me. I would have to fly down to Texas and sit down with her in her office. And she was able to do it virtual like this. And, I tell this to young law students and to people that are just breaking in the career that you now have an opportunity to meet with people. It's a lot easier than making an appointment, you physically go into their office. It's so much easier, and I'm giving, I'm meeting with people that I would have never met with pre-pandemic.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I'm doing programs in Hong Kong and India now that I would never have done before. So, yeah. I think as you said earlier, we pivoted very quickly, and I think that the ADR side of things has done so excellently in so many ways. I mean, the numbers you've talked about already show the success of what you've been able to do. One of the things I would like to share, Jeff, and that has come to my realization, and it sounds like maybe that's where you are too, but as far as like having a trial run, as far as doing a Zoom session, because many people are not used to using it for business per se, maybe a little fearful about the environment. I have found and encouraged people to build into their practices more of these pre-mediation sessions, and
Sure.
not just to look at the substantive elements of the dispute, but also an actual practice session. And so you might meet with an advocate first to get them warmed up, and then the advocate could even then invite the client in after they've had a little bit of training and education, so that they don't appear quite so novice. And
Sure.
but it's all about building rapport, establishing trust, and building confidence of all the parties in not only the process, but in you as the mediator or the arbitrator as well.
Absolutely, and that is so important. And the what you mentioned about doing a trial run, we encourage that strongly for our parties, and our case managers do that. They say, let's set up a meeting beforehand. And when the pandemic first hit, for the arbitrators and mediators that were a little concerned about this technology being able to do it by themselves, we said, listen, do it with your relatives. Do it with your family members and try it. And a lot of them did that. I said, schedule a Zoom call. And a lot of people ended up doing it for the holidays anyways, for all the holidays that occurred over the last year. But I said, that's what I was telling a lot of our mediators and arbitrators. And they did. And they became comfortable with it. And we tell our arbitrators and mediators, listen, we have plenty of Zoom accounts at AAA and plenty of other virtual platforms. But I encourage you to get your own account. It's not that expensive. And because you may get an ad hoc case, without AAA. But if you get a AAA case, we'll help you. But we don't want to sit on the call the whole time. We don't want to sit through the whole mediation or through the whole arbitration. We'll get you started and we'll jump off. But doing the trial stuff is so, so important and getting people comfortable. And I've seen it. People get comfortable real fast. For that big mediation, about half the people had not done virtual. So we did an evening session, because we all did different time zones, on a Friday night. And we did it for about an hour and a half, and that calmed everyone down. And so when we came, it was a Friday night actually, and then Monday we commenced the mediation, and everyone was on time. Everyone felt comfortable. There was no mistakes. They all did their names properly because they had to put their name and put what company they're affiliated with. And I was like, wow, so it works because these are not that hard. I mean, I'm not that tech savvy, but I was able to get it pretty fast.
Yeah, yeah. And so one of the things that I building on that is that, much like we have our sort of mediation overview, as far as, walking clients through what we're going to do, and, doing that pre-mediation, doing that at the start of mediation. And what's so important to include in that now is that the high, overview of here's what I'm going to do technology wise, and acquaint them, and I'll even show people at the start of the mediation, let's just walk through this real quickly so that you can actually see what I'm going to do, and we'll just practice a little bit. And even to do that again at the start of the mediation. So, because I like to say repetition reinforces retention.
Absolutely. And I'm seeing that at AAA. Yeah. Another great thing about what's going on, this is something I noticed, and a couple of my colleagues noticed, we're now able to draw in arbitrators and mediators from anywhere. So in the past, my focus was, the geographic area of New York, because you physically have to get somewhere. And this is great with respect to diversity, okay? Because a lot of new arbitrators and mediators they're far more diverse than they used to be, okay? So now we're looking at the whole country. And I ask clients, when I deal with a big client, I'll say, listen, can I go outside the New York area? And a lot of them are saying, absolutely. We're probably not going to have an in-person hearing in the next 6 months. Look around the country. And so we are. And that helps the new arbitrators. And again, a lot of them are diverse. And that's wonderful. So it's expanding the pool of arbitrators for our caseload. And it's giving people an opportunity, these new arbitrators and mediators.
That's wonderful. We talked earlier about a broader reach, and it's broken down some of the geographic barriers that have so long existed without incurring a tremendous amount of costs associated with them. A couple things, Jeff, you reminded me of something that you had shared with me prior to our show today. One is you do have a link to an article that you wrote about that multi-billion-dollar bankruptcy case, right? And so that's something I can share with our viewers and listeners.
Please do, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, I'm excited to read it. I didn't not have a chance. The other thing is that you brought up the word diversity. And I know that you've been very actively involved in various initiatives around diversity. And I'd like you to expound upon that, because I'm particularly interested, because I've also done a lot of things around cross-cultural, what I call cultural competencies and cross-cultural understandings.
Well, it's a very, very important thing at AAA ICBR, and I've been pretty active with the diversity committee at AAA since the early 2000s. And in 2009, we formed the Higginbotham program, which is a program that we do every 2 years, where we bring in people that are 5 to 6 years experience, that are diverse, and they apply from all over the world. They come meet with us for a week, and we train them on ADR skills. And that's been a great program. It's a huge success, and we've been doing it since 2009. And I'm still in contact with so many of the people that have done that class. And usually it's about every 2 years, it's about 20 people. And we tie it into our annual meeting, and it's such a great program. And at AAA ICBR, we have a policy of all lists that go out have to be 20% diverse. And we met that by about 93% of our cases nationwide, met that in 2020. And New York, I'm happy to say 100%, because we're far more diverse in New York. But with respect to the organizations that I'm involved in addition to AAA, the New York State Bar Association's Diversity Committee, I'm heavily involved in that. The ADR Inclusion Network, I was just asked to be a board member, and that's a group that was formed about 3 years ago in New York to bring together thought leaders from various organizations, not just AAA, but JAMS, the court systems, people that are leaders in the field that can help diverse candidates and do mentoring programs. And then there's a new group called REAL, and it's Racial Equality for Arbitration Lawyers, REAL, and they go the cute phrase, let's get real, which is great. And I'm an ambassador, and I look forward to working with this new group that's focusing more on race than gender. That's a big focus for this organization, and it's more of an international organization. But I think it's an important thing for me to be a part of because I do deal with a lot of law firms. I do deal with a lot of arbitrators and mediators. So I do have some, I can help people. And one of the things that Susan Guthrie did, she did a podcast for us regarding our foundation. And the AAA has a foundation, it's AAA ICDR Foundation, where we have a lot of money that's donated, okay, by our arbitrators and mediators, and even by the AAA. Okay, it's a separate organization from the AAA, and we gave a lot of money last year to it. And one of the things, for your audience is we have a grants or funds for people that want to do ADR programs that are diverse. You can get up to $2,000 for an ADR program. If you're diverse, and it's really not that difficult to apply for it. So it's called the AAA ICDR Foundation. Just type that in, and it's a wonderful resource. And again, we provide grants for a lot of great initiatives. But diversity is a very, very important thing, to me and also to my company.
Wonderful. I know she has mentioned that on some of our programs, so we've been out there promoting it for you as well. So hopefully attract more people to that. That's excellent. That's excellent. Well, Jeff, you have given us just a rich foundation of information from both practical experience since the pandemic, but also throughout your years of experience. And if there was one thing that you would want to impart to our audience today before we wrap up, what would that be?
Well, I'm very, very passionate about ADR, and I think it's the future. And we're seeing that with the pandemic that, the court systems are backlogged right now. And it's people that were concerned about arbitration, employment, consumer, those areas are kind of controversial. Give it a chance. I mean, ADR is a great field. And a lot of people are saying that no longer call it alternative dispute resolution, call it dispute resolution, because it's now alternative. It's growing. And, one of the things I've seen in all my years at AAA, it's grown tremendously, which I love to see. And when I started off in 1990, it was different. And it's now everywhere. It's in the court systems. There's so many ADR providers. We used to be the only, not the only, but there's not that many ADR providers around the world. Now there are a lot. There's a lot of competition, but there's a lot of work out there for everybody.
Absolutely. Dispute resolution can be applied to almost any time there's differences between people. They don't have to be large legal cases, but just simply working through relationships, whatever that might be, in the community, in the workplace, within organizations, between business leaders, et cetera. So it's just got vast applications. And I like what you have to say there as far as take the A out of ADR and just keep it DR. And because I know actually in Australia, back when I was co-chair of the workplace section for the Association for Conflict Resolution back in the first decade of the century, we'd have a lot of speakers from Australia, and Australia was there. And dispute resolution in Australia was considered primary dispute resolution, and litigation was the alternative. So
interesting. Well, for your audience members that have gone through court battles or whatever, you're so limited when you go to the court system. And I love to tell lawyers, when you go to AAA or any other institution, ADR institution, the flexibility is amazing. You can deviate from any of our rules if you want to. And if the parties are playing nice in the sandbox together, you can deviate. You can't do that in court. You're stuck with your judge that's assigned to you. You're stuck with the rules of evidence and the procedures and all that kind of stuff. In arbitration, you're not. And that's what I love about arbitration, the flexibility, and you select your decision maker. Wow. Who wouldn't want that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It just creates vast opportunities and viable ways out of difficult times, whatever those difficult times might be. And so, Jeff, you have been, a world of information and insight and wealth of knowledge and sharing of so many experiences and resources. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure and an honor to be here today, Debra.
Well, thank you, Jeff. And so where can they find out more information about you?
LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn, so please tell your audience members to link up with me on LinkedIn. I have over 26 connections, 26,000, not 26. And I'm very active on LinkedIn. And you're not going to see any pictures of my kids, my animals, whatever. It's all about ADR and about programs that are coming up worldwide, and also articles. And I know we're connected. We communicate on social media a lot. So please, that's where they can get information.
Wonderful. Yes, LinkedIn is hugely viable for that kind of connection. So Again, Jeff Zaino, thank you so much for being here from the AAA ICDR. And I look forward to having you again in the future.
Would love to. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, we actually negotiate every single day of our life in many, many different ways. But oftentimes, we really don't have quite the skills, the knowledge, the insight, and the mindset and how to negotiate effectively. I'm so delighted to bring to you on this particular episode of Decoding the Conflict Mindset, Gabriel Hartley, lawyer, mediator, and author, as well as blogger. She has tremendous insight. You won't want to miss out. You have to listen to this and also gain insight into her blogs and interesting topics that she has. So subscribe, get ready for the next episode, and stay tuned for what Gabriel has to share about how to negotiate effectively. Thank you for joining us on Decoding the Conflict Mindset. This series was designed to bring to you the best in thought leaders to shape new worlds of thinking about working through disputes in the world, in your community, and in your home. Subscribe so you receive notification every time a new episode is launched.